I made a video earlier this season about the collapse of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and if you guys want to go check it out, I'll link it for you guys in the description. But basically, we are at a point with the Jaguars where they decided to keep Trent Baalke but fire Doug Pederson. And Doug Pederson, I understand he's been not so great the last couple of years. After the Jaguars started off 8-3, they were on the brink of having the 1 seed, but after Trevor Lawrence sprained his ankle, the season went off the tracks. And since then, the Jaguars did not get off to the best start in 2024. It was just a season that never seemed to get going. Trevor Lawrence was in and out of the lineup with a shoulder injury and then later sustained a serious concussion due to a late hit against the Houston Texans, and we didn't see him suit up for the Jags for the rest of the season. And we knew at that point anyways Doug Pederson was on the way out. It was just a matter of determining, is Trent Baalke going to be out with him? I've been consistent on this channel that I'm not a big fan of Trent Baalke. I mean, when he was in San Francisco, he somehow won a power struggle with Jim Harbaugh, who guided the San Francisco 49ers to their first Super Bowl appearance in nearly 2 decades. And then in his next stop, he was able to overcome a power struggle with him and Doug Pederson, who actually won a Super Bowl in his previous stop in Philly. Looking at Trent Baalke's moves since becoming the Jaguars GM, I mean, the first one was pretty obvious. In 2021, he had the first overall pick, and that was a slam dunk. You picked Trevor Lawrence, easy peasy. But since then, there's been a lot of suspect moves, and to highlight on some of them, I mean, you talk about the 2022 offseason when he doled out a ton of cash to Christian Kirk, who was a decent receiver over in his days in Arizona, but not a true hot commodity. And that was the season when we saw a ton of wide receiver movement, including Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, and so many other receivers were moving around the league, but instead he doles out a ton of money to Christian Kirk. And Kirk had a decent year in 2022, but since then has definitely tailed off. Fast forward to April's draft in 2022, Trent Baalke had the #1 overall selection yet again, but instead of picking standout pass rusher from Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson, he decided to go with Travon Walker from the University of Georgia. And obviously Georgia had a historic defense that led them to the national championship earlier in that college football season. But Travon Walker was not the hottest commodity coming out of college. He was a project type of player, very raw, and has since had a decent career, but compared to Aiden Hutchinson, who has played in 9 fewer games at the point of this recording, Travon Walker actually has fewer sacks than Aiden Hutchinson, and that was a massive miss. In fact, that was criminal that he missed on such a move like that. Fast forward to 2023, instead of to try to bolster the offensive line, he goes with Anton Harrison, and he is simply just not panned out. A lot of moves, just hasn't been the greatest for the Jaguars since Trent Baalke has become the GM. I will credit Trent for picking up Brian Thomas Jr. in this year's draft, as Brian Thomas Jr. has been one of the best wide receivers in the league, coming in as a rookie. And I mean, I think the Jaguars actually hit a home run with that draft pick, and Brian Thomas has been successful with multiple quarterbacks throwing in the ball this season. But other than that, I don't see too many great moves with Trent Baalke. And to think back to his days in San Francisco, wasn't great in San Francisco either. With this move that Shad Khan made, retaining Trent Baalke, this is raising a lot of eyebrows and scratching a lot of heads. That are the Jaguars really serious about winning? Because keeping Trent Baalke means that the head coach that they do inevitably hire is going to have to answer to Trent Baalke. And if the leash is short and this is truly Trent Baalke's last year, then you're really missing out on an opportunity to pick a head coach GM duo, and then we're going to be in this vicious cycle that we've been seeing with a team like the Chicago Bears, who fire a GM, rehire one, fire the head coach, then get a new quarterback, etc., etc. They do have Trevor Lawrence and some pretty attractive pieces on offense, and I think eventually they will find some type of offensive-minded guy, but they're going to be in a big rebuild, because with the massive contract that Trevor Lawrence has, there's not a ton of cap room to build around that type of contract, and there's going to be moving parts. So inevitably, I do definitely think that Sean Khan missed an opportunity, and he will absolutely regret retaining Trent Baalke as GM.